that and
Anyway, thanks, Sumitra.
We'll start recording. Okay, so we are now streaming live and we are ready to start whenever you are.
Okay, and it is 4 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. And our first item is a motion moved by Victor Hayes, seconded by Tom Dewey, that Francis Smith act as chair for the April 14th, 2022 meeting. All right, everyone okay with that? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, just some opening remarks. I want to welcome everyone to this virtual meeting of Committee of the Adjustment and thank the public and committee members and staff for making this meeting possible so that we can stay safe and get our business done in a safe manner. Just so members of the public are aware, all of the members are muted on our end and your camera will be turned off. We'll give you instructions later. For those who don't know me, my name's Francis Smith and I'm the mayor of Central Frontenac, but the chair of this committee today. And I'd like to introduce you to Shirley Wan, who's the deputy mayor. Shirley. And
Hello.
we have Tom Dewey. There's Shirley, Tom Dewey.
Right here.
Victor Hayes.
Good afternoon.
And Nikki Gowdy.
Good afternoon.
Okay. And that's it, I believe, for committee members tonight. Cindy Dakeman, our deputy clerk, will be assisting us as the meeting host. And we're also joined by planning staff, Dimitri and Sonia and Jenny Kapusta. The formal meeting will follow the agenda as posted online, which is on the website. Staff have also prepared a presentation for everyone to follow along during the meeting. And this will be up on the screen. If you've joined us by phone, we encourage you to open up the presentation in the agenda and follow along. For each application with a public meeting, we will follow this format. I, as the chair, will introduce the file so that everyone knows where we are on the agenda. The planner will provide an overview of the application. We'll then ask if there's any comments from the applicant or agent. Committee members will then ask the applicant or agent any questions. The public will then have the opportunity to ask questions. I encourage you to ask any question and feel comfortable with the new process. The committee will then deliberate and vote on the application. Voting will take place with the members of the committee raising their hands, and I will then state whether the vote is carried or not. If there are any previously deferred items, they will be first on the agenda. As the public meeting has already been held for those, we'll ask if the applicants themselves have any questions. All members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the new applications. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Central Frontenac before a decision is made, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Township staff will be in touch following the meeting. We'll be forwarding a copy of the decision within 15 days to the applicant and anyone who's requested to be notified. Should you have any questions after the meeting, we encourage you to reach out to staff. The applicant, the minister, or other person or public body who has an interest in the matter may, within 20 days of making the decision or date of decision, notice of appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal against the decision of the committee by filing with the Secretary Treasurer of the committee a notice of appeal. I'll now ask Cindy to provide an overview of how members can participate. Cindy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When the meeting is open to the public, the chair will ask any member of the public if they have any questions or comments. At that point, members of the public will be asked to use the raise hand feature, or sometimes shown in the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. This alerts us that you would like to speak. Staff will notify the chair that someone has indicated they wish to speak, and then we will proceed to unmute your microphone. And as a member of the public, you will receive a notification that your microphone has been unmuted. Please wait a second after unmuting your microphone before speaking. If you're calling in by phone, you can use the *9 feature when you would like to raise your hand feature. That'll let us know that you wish to speak. and you will receive a prompt on the phone that you have raised your hand, and you'll be notified again when your microphone has been unmuted. So we do have 3 attendees at the meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. So in the unlikely situation that we get disconnected, we will all attempt to reconnect. If we can't connect within 15 minutes, then the meeting would have to be postponed, and we'd get in touch with everyone here tonight to look at rescheduling it, but that's not going to happen. So we thank you for your patience as we embark on this virtual meeting, and I'm sure it's going to go smoothly. All right. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of the committee? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. And I have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Sherry One that the agenda be adopted as presented. Are there any amendments or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Madam Mayor, just one moment. You
Yes.
started off saying
ahead.
it was to adopt the agenda, and then the motion that you
Oh,
called for was
sorry.
the minutes. So we need to do those separately,
Sorry.
please.
Okay, just a minute. We're out of order here, that's why. Here we go. Sorry, I'll take that back. This is moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Sherry Wan, that the minutes of March the 10th, 2022 be adopted as presented. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor? Okay, that's motion number 2. That's carried. I guess appointing the chair messed up the agenda. Now we'll do the agenda. So moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Sherry Wan that the agenda be adopted as presented. There's no changes to the agenda from Crystal? No? Okay, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, so our first item is a previously deferred item, and Crystal, do you want to introduce this, or we'll just have Dimitri or Sonia go ahead, or Jenny?
Yeah, I think Dimitri's going to speak on it. It's the Harvey application on the 40-foot road, previously approved. We just kind of did a backwards approval from the retained and severed. We mixed them up, but Dimitri can speak on it.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's the request. So yeah, this application isn't a previously deferred item. It is an application that the committee previously approved. What we're asking for here is a change to the conditions. So this request is asking to modify the conditions associated with the severance application that was approved by the Committee of Adjustment on November 11th of 2021. The committee approved application B6121HI to sever a 57.2 hectare or a 141 acre parcel and to retain a 8.58 hectare or a 21.2 acre parcel on the property. The property is located at 1758 40-foot road in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook. The conditions that formed the approval identified the severed lot to be the 141 acre parcel, and the 21 acre parcel was identified as the retained. The applicant is asking for the retained and severed parcels to be switched in the conditions so that the severed parcel is actually the smaller one, being the 21 acres, and that the retained parcel is the larger one, being 141 acres. Planning staff are of the opinion that this request is pretty administrative and technical in nature and will not result in any negative impacts with respect to planning policy or the township zoning bylaw. This request also does not change any of the analysis that was presented in the initial staff report, which was considered by the committee back in November. However, what this change will do for the applicant is allow them to save money because now they'll be required to survey only the smaller lot rather than the larger lot. From our understanding, the surveying of the 141 acre parcel is substantially more expensive than to do it the other way around. Overall, planning staff are recommending approval of the proposed modifications. Thank you.
Okay. Is the applicant with us and wishes to speak?
I don't believe there's anyone here for this application, but if there is anyone wishing to speak, you can use the raise hand feature now. No, I see no one, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from any member of the committee? It's different. We haven't had one like this, I don't think, before, but it does make sense. Okay, so I will read the motion. There's no one from the public to speak for or against this one?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Sherry Wan. Whereas the committee conditionally approved consent application B6121 Hinchinbrook Harvey at its meeting November the 11th, 2021 by resolution 138, 2021. And whereas the applicant has requested an amendment to the conditions, now therefore be it resolved that the conditional decision dated November the 11th, 2021 for consent application B61-21 HI Harvey for the property located at part of Lot 10, Concession 1 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 8.58 hectare, 21.20 acre parcel as a new lot be amended and approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report dated April the 8th, 2022. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. There's no applications for consent, and we have one application for minor variance. That's B0322 Chalmers. Who's doing this one? Jenny?
Yes,
Crystal.
Madam Chair. That would be me. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Sorry. 1 second. Okay, I'll share my screen. All right, hopefully everyone can see this now. This is application A322 for the property located at 1023 Brewer Road in the geographic township of Oso. This proposal will legalize the placement of a storage container, otherwise known as a C-can, on the subject property. Storage containers 39 square meters or 420 square feet in area, and is considered an accessory structure for the purposes of the zoning bylaw. This proposal is to reduce the setback to the wetland, which borders the west and southern property boundaries from 30 meters to 24 meters. I would like to note that the notice that was circulated initially stated the reduction was from 30 meters to 15 meters. However, on-site measurements by planning staff and conservation staff confirmed that the minimum setback for the storage structure will actually be 24 meters and up to 27 meters, given the angle of this lot is not totally perpendicular or parallel to the wetland. So it will be to reduce that setback to 24 meters. There were, this application was circulated to Mississippi Valley Conservation for comments. Comments dated April 8th stated no objections to this application as submitted. The Conservation Authority actually conducted 2 site visits. They went out initially to review the proposal, and subsequent to receiving some concerns from neighbors, conducted a second site visit just to confirm what they had observed the first time and that there was no other concerns that needed to be addressed based on those raised from the public. They noted in their comments that the boundaries of the wetlands do encroach slightly into the west and south ends of the subject property, as shown on that previous slide in the green area. Generally, MVCA policies would not support development less than 30 meters from the boundary of a wetland. However, their policies do note that on existing developed lots, they would consider further development, provided that development does not further encroach than any existing structures on the property, and noted that in this case, those requirements have been met. The storage container is located in the furthest possible location from the wetland on the subject property and is on the non-wetland side of the existing structures. Based on these, the Conservation Authority do not have objections to this proposal. They did note that as this CCAN has already been placed on the property, they have sent out a notice of enforcement or infraction, and we'll be following up with the enforcement on that. In this case, the enforcement is just to obtain a permit, which they should have done before placing this on the property. Similar to the building department has put a notice infraction out for they didn't obtain a building permit before they put this on. So this application will, if approved, allow the property owner to apply for these permits and get the proper approvals for the location of the storage container. As I noted, there's a number of concerns raised by the public, including that it has already been placed on the property and is not a proposed structure. Planning staff do understand this. However, all of applications are evaluated as if these structures had not been placed or constructed, and that's why the notice of application was for a proposed storage structure rather than saying it's already on site, and that's how things are evaluated. Other concerns raised include the method of installation of the storage container being placed directly on the ground, proximity to the existing dwelling, potential negative environmental impacts, the proximity of that storage container also to the existing holding tank, and that there is some exposed piping between the dwelling and the holding tank on the subject property. Also, that there's no septic system or running water on the subject property. Planning staff took all of these items into consideration when making their decision. Would like to note that there is no requirement for a septic system or running water as a result of this application, as it is a container for storage only. There's no increase in habitable space, so there's no impact on any existing on-site services. With regards to potential negative environmental impacts, planning staff rely on the analysis and comments from the Conservation Authority for these, and based on the comments of the Conservation Authority and discussions planning staff had directly with conservation staff, there are no negative environmental impacts anticipated as a result of this application further than what already exists on the subject property, as this storage container is placed at a greater setback distance than any of the existing development on the property. With regards to the method of installation and the proximity to the existing dwelling, those will have to be rectified at the building permit stage. The property owner can work with the building officials to ensure that any foundation or gravel is as required has been placed, and that this structure does meet the minimum separation between a principal dwelling and an accessory building of 2 meters. If this reduces the setback to the property line with the KMP trail, both planning staff and conservation would be supportive of a reduction of a side yard setback on that side if required. However, it appears based on the dimensions that this setback between the building and the storage container can be obtained while meeting the required setback to the side property line, as that's only 1 meter for accessory structures such as these. Based on all of the information provided and technical comments, planning staff are recommending approval of this application as submitted, subject to obtaining permits from both conservation and township building officials.
Okay. Is the applicant is with us tonight? Mr. Chalmers, would you like to address the committee?
If you wish to speak, can you use your raise hand feature and I can move you over? Okay, just a moment, please. Okay, I've moved you over. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I knew I was supposed to get a permit, and the CCAN came up real quick, and it was something I had to jump on or lose. I did talk to somebody in the township office, and they didn't seem to think there'd be an issue with me setting it there until I got my permit, which was applied for as soon as I could. Other than that, I have no comments.
Okay. Thank you. Does committee have any question for Mr. Chalmers? Okay, seeing none. Members of the public, we have a couple of people on. Would they like to speak to us?
Going to allow Jackie Salmon over. Can you go ahead?
Hi there, this is Anne Shirley and Jackie Salmon. So we have a couple of questions and points we'd like to bring forward. First, I'll introduce you to Anne Shirley.
I'm Anne Shirley. I cohabitate on this property at 1026 Brewer Road, right across from the storage container. And I have a few points to make before I submit my question. The storage container is made of steel, first of all, which we all know is prone to corrosion and rust over time. You can't deny that. Also, there could be lead in the paint. Now, in the spring, we observed with all the snow we had around the trailer, it was sitting right on the ground, but part of it was up. It wasn't completely level, so part of it was sticking up. And the snow that was melting from underneath that container had potential contaminants in it, and it went into the wetland. So we're very concerned about that. And then the container will impact the properties due to the shared water table, which puts our drinking water at risk of contamination. And I would like to propose this question: how can the municipality ensure there won't be corrosive material leaching into the soil and wetland?
And I have a couple of points to make as well. This is Jackie. I'm concerned about the decreased property values because this container is very unsightly. It's untidy looking. It's not even level. So my concern is about the property values being decreased, but also if the owner uses this as a bunkie, where's the human waste going to go? I know he says he's going to use it for storage, but if it is not, and people stay in there, where will the human waste go without a septic system and running water? So that's a big concern for me.
And he's already mentioned that that's what he wants to do to one of the neighbors.
So that's it from us. Thank you.
Okay. Barry, would you like to answer some of those points?
Am I still muted, or can you hear me?
You're on. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
The paint does not contain any lead in it. It's a newer paint. The C-can is not level because I do not have an actual permit to place that in place yet. As far as unsightly goes, it is painted. It's not a fluorescent orange or green or anything like that. It's like a brownish color. I don't see it being any having any impact on the wetlands or the water table. As far as sewage goes, it's not designed to be a bunkie. It's designed to be a storage. And there is a privy on that property, which has been there forever, as far as I know. And that is where the waste goes. So I don't know what else to say other than that. So hopefully that answers the questions.
Okay. And you will be putting gravel underneath it once you do get it to where you want to place it?
I have to place it on blocks and everything to level it up. There will be some landscaping done around it. Basically, whatever the township tells me I have to do, that will be done.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
If there's anyone else who wishes to speak and use the raise hand feature, I'm going to move over Donald Jarvis. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So basically, I'm kind of speaking for myself, but for other neighbors who have written letters but cannot get on Zoom meeting. They had a concern that they understood that outbuildings needed to be a minimum of 10 feet away from existing structures, and that this structure is not. And wondering if why certain people have to have that requirement, but others don't.
Okay, maybe who can answer that? Jenny?
I'm
Is that a
thinking,
side yard?
yes, Madam Chair. There are requirements for separations between principal structures and accessory structures. It's 2 meters in the central frontenac zoning bylaw with a 1 meter side yard for accessory structures. As Mr. Chalmers noted, he has not yet obtained a permit. Before he can obtain a permit from the township, he will have to ensure that the location of this does meet all of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And in addition to whatever leveling or base required under building code for this structure. So once that goes through, he will have to meet these requirements and have an inspection and have that be signed off. So hopefully that should address any of the concerns with the proximities.
Okay. Any other comments, Sam?
As I say, like, I'm concerned that then if it does not meet that requirement, is it going to be moved? Because the lot shape does not allow, I think, at that point for it to be moved.
I'm gonna say if it is not able to meet the requirements of the bylaw with this additional minor variance, it would have to be relocated to a place that can meet the requirements, or potentially an additional minor variance would have to be sought if there are further reductions required.
My last question then, if I can go ahead, Francis.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, then if the structure itself, what about the contents or the upcoming contents? Should we address possible what concerns might be forthcoming with what are planned to be stored in the building?
Planning staff don't have the ability to dictate what people store in their storage buildings. We look at the use of the structure and its location, so it is required to be a storage building. But same way, if you were to construct a shed in this location, we're not able to tell people what they can and can't store in those structures.
Even if they're environmentally unsafe?
Even if they're environmentally unsafe, that's beyond the scope of the zoning bylaw and the ability of planning staff to dictate. If there's
Okay.
concerns with hazardous materials, there are property standards that must be met, or if there's concerns with leachate or other such things, there are ways to address those, but at this point, those are what ifs, and that's beyond the scope of what we're able to address here.
Okay.
And
Thank
the
you.
Conservation Authority would be able to come in and have a look at that as well, right?
I believe if there was concerns with regards to leachate and hazardous materials, that if they were required, they could come in and investigate.
Yes. Okay.
This is the Salmons. We do have one additional question.
Well, I
Yes,
just
go ahead.
wonder, this is Anne Shirley, and I just wonder, the next time someone comes along and they don't want to agree to that 30-meter limit, will they also be allowed to put something that's hazardous at 24 meters or 15 meters? I mean, what is the point of these bylaws if you're not going to enforce them?
Well, I'll let the planners speak about the minor variance process, but that's exactly what minor variances are all about. When you can't meet the criteria that is set out, then you have to apply for the lesser distance, and then that institutes all of these agencies getting involved to have a look at whether or not it's safe to do so. Jenny, did I explain that properly?
Absolutely perfectly, Madam Chair. Yes, that's the entire intent and point of this application and process is they aren't able to meet the requirements. So they have requested a reduction, and therefore we've evaluated this the same way we would evaluate any other minor variance request for a reduction, be it wetlands or side yard setbacks or building height or what have you. If you're unable to meet the requirements of the zone, this is the process which you would go through to see if you're able to get permission to do what you want. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Okay. Any member of committee have questions for any member of the public or Barry? Okay. I think just a comment that I certainly hear your concerns and I agree with all those concerns. The Conservation Authority has looked at it and doesn't feel that we will have pollution happening in the water. I agree that sea cans are certainly not the prettiest thing to look out your window and see. Unfortunately, the zoning bylaw that is in place right now doesn't really speak a lot about sea cans, but the new zoning bylaw that we're looking at doing will have a section about sea cans and where they can be placed and what the criteria will be. But that zoning bylaw isn't in force right at this point. So if there are no other questions or comments, I thank you for your comments and I will read the motion and committee can make their decision. Moved by Victor and seconded by Tom. In making the decision upon this application, the committee considered whether or not the variance requested was minor and desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure, and that the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the official plan will be maintained, or in the case of a change in use of property, which is lawfully non-conforming under the bylaw, as to whether or not this application has met the requirements of subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, concur in the following decision and reasons for decision. That minor variance application A0321 Chalmers for the property located at part of Lot 10, Concession 1 in the geographic township of Oso to reduce the water body setback from 30 meters to 24 meters to allow for a storage container to be placed on the lot be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report, and that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made written request to be notified, and to any other person or public body prescribed. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. So, Mr. Chalmers, I would say to you that you need to get in touch with the building department, and in future, before you do something, get the permits first instead of after the fact. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. Any other planning business? Crystal, anything else to come before the committee?
Sorry, I had Crystal muted. No, that's it.
Okay. Does any member of the committee have anything that needs to be discussed? Okay, hearing none, I have a motion. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Tom. That this meeting be adjourned until 4 p.m. May the 12th, 2022, virtually and in person at Oso Hall, 1107 Garrett Street, Charlotte Lake. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. I've ended up with a sore throat tonight, so I'm glad we wore masks the other night.
Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Bye-bye.